great. I'm getting married in 6 months, and my soon-to-be wife is going to be moving to Las Vegas. And I'm like, well, what am I going to do now, you know?
Something that happens to me time and time again on this podcast is sitting down and chatting with a guest and all of a sudden realizing how hilariously much we have in common. And that was totally the case with today's show. I'm Jason Heath. This is Contrabass Conversations, and we're talking today with Abo Gumroyan. And I'm talking to you from my place here in San Francisco. And Abo actually went to school in San Francisco at the San Francisco Conservatory, studied with Scott Pingel, Steve Tramontozzi, also worked with David Allen Moore, and many other people whose names you probably know if you've listened to this podcast for a while. Abo and I have played in a bunch of the same groups together, so wow, what a small world. And he has done much more beyond that. He is a Grammy award-winning bassist, which is so cool, with the Pacific Mambo Orchestra, toured with them all over the place. He's done shows in Vegas. We talk about that. He grew up largely in Vegas, is living in the LA area now, and adapting to the times like we all are. And he, at some point, he describes himself as a musical chameleon, which is such a great way to describe what he does. What an artist. Super cool. He's doing great things on Instagram too. And it really is inspiring to see him. And we talk about that also. So definitely follow him on Instagram. That's linked up to in the show notes. And Abo did this super cool walkthrough of his home studio and what he uses for recording. And he records all these big album dates. So it's very cool to see what he uses in terms of audio interfaces, electric basses, acoustic basses. So check that out. That's also linked up in the show notes. And before we dive in here, we're just a couple weeks out from the International Online Bass Summit, and we have quite a crew assembled for you there. You name them, they're probably going to be there in terms of the double bass world. It's just really an exciting lineup, and we're into the hundreds of participants registered already. If you're not registered, I would love to see you there. I will be there all week, June 24th to the 28th, if I didn't say that already. And we have some great sponsors for this event, and I want to shout out one in particular today. That is Discover Double Bass. Oh my goodness. And you're going to be hearing a lot more about Discover Double Bass. Not that you haven't already heard quite a bit about them on this podcast. I am pretty sure I've had every single teacher on the site on this podcast to talk in general or about their course. And what a lineup of courses they have there. And by the way, I have 2 courses coming out with Discover Double Bass. So you'll be hearing about those in the future. But I'm just such a fan of what Jeff Chalmers does over there. And we've got most of those: David Allen Moore, Joe Conyers, Danny Zeman, John Goldsby, Olivier Babaz. What a lineup. And we're going to be, or Jeff rather, of Discover Double Bass is going to be giving away a free course for each of these teachers during their session for the International Online Bass Summit, basssummit.org. So if you are registered for that event and you check out one of these sessions, you may win a course, which is the price of admission for the Bass Summit. So that's very cool. And whether or not you can make the summit, I encourage you to check out discoverdoublebase.com. It's such a fantastic resource, and I've been such a fan of what they've been building there. I'm so honored to be a part of it, and I'm so honored they're sponsoring the Bass Summit. So without further ado, let's dive into this conversation with Abo Gumroyan. You're just north of Pasadena, right? Are you?
I'm technically Altadena, but I'm Pasadena. It's like weird. It's like I'm literally on the city line.
Oh, really? Okay, cool. Yeah, I do some. I work for this company, Eastman Strings, and they're in Pomona. So I'm down. In. I mean, that's not like right next to you, but I'm in L.A. area usually every couple of months or so.
That's my that was actually my first like good instrument until I got my good bass. Man, that bass got me undergrad, my grad school auditions, couple of jobs that I won.
Really? Wow. Oh,
yeah.
That's so cool.
Yeah.
Wow. Small world.
Yeah, right?
Wow. Well, it looks like you've been making the best of things. It's pretty cool to see all the online stuff you've been doing with folks. Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah, I mean, it's, today it's like, I have actually 2 like record things that I'm going to do here in my home studio for clients that I'm going to fly back to them. So that's the new business model, man. It's kind of crazy how everything changed in 2 days,
Yeah, it's interesting because, I mean, like, especially folks in the recording studio or doing any sort of recording work, this is not totally new to people, is like, swapping stems and that sort of stuff, in different parts of the world.
No. I mean, for me, it's a little different because, I'm offering, bowed stuff, which a lot of guys, maybe they do, but I'm doing like full, like string, 2D section parts from my home studio, in addition to, electric bass and synth bass, all that stuff that I also do. But it's been, I kind of found a niche and I'm trying to take advantage of it because, I mean, for the time being, that's all I see really happening, man.
I know. It's crazy. It's crazy. I was talking to Dmitry Gorodetsky, who's
Oh yeah, that's my boy.
That's
man.
Awesome. Yeah, I'll bet we know a lot of people in common. It's fun. It's funny, like going through Instagram. And I was like, oh yeah, look, like there's so many like folks down in that area, like Sue Wolf and.
I mean, well, yeah, I don't know if you know. I mean, I lived in the city for 8 years before when you got to San Francisco, I think I just left the year before.
What? Really? Oh, I had no idea.
Oh yeah. I mean, I still sub with the symphony time to time. I used to have a seat in Oakland Symphony, and I was assistant principal in Stockton.
Oh, get out! Well, now the world got a whole lot smaller. That's
yeah, man. So it's I still come up. I still talk to Scott and Steve. Every week. Obviously I see them when I come up to play. So yeah, man, it was really good times up there, I must say.
Well, let me know when this is all passed and you find yourself up here again. I'd love to take you out for a drink. That'd be great. And congratulations! I got to see you and your wife are expecting, right?
Yeah. What a time to have a kid, huh?
Oh, man.
No, man, it's they always say it's never the right time, it's never the wrong time, but I'm stoked for it. So yeah, we're expecting in September, end of September, baby boy.
Wow! Congratulations, man. That's awesome. That's great. So when did you move down to Southern California? Was that you left before I got here in 2016, like late?
Okay, I left San Francisco in 2015.
Just before. Okay. Wow.
So what happened was, and I'm sure we'll get into it later, I got accepted to grad school at the conservatory in 2008 for a master's degree. So I moved up there in 2008 and I immediately started working. Like it got to a point where I was like, I would go talk to like the president of the school. I'm like, hey, like, I got like 2 weeks with the symphony. Like, I can't make this orchestra concert. Like, can you like cut me some slack here? Or like, hey, like, I'm going to be gone for like 2 months out on the road. I mean, that's why like my undergrad took me, 7 years, 8 years to finish because, I got on this arena tour. I got on this, 1 year contract here or there. And it was just like, I was like, well, this is better than school. It's like on the job training, So I started in 2008 with Steve for 2 years for my master's. It was kind of cool. One of my really good friends and, one of the finest players that I know, Rob Ashley, we kind of were like the young guns on the scene, which was really cool. And we were like throwing each other work all the time. He's like arguably one of the best. It was a really, really nice time up there, man. And, I won some jobs, we got our names out there and, just stuff fell into place. And then the whole Grammy thing happened with Pacific Mambo Orchestra, all my work in the Latin music industry. And it was just a really great time. But then, it got to a point where just I couldn't do it, man. It was so expensive. and I was doing really good. But I just, I would look at my tax returns at the end of the year and be like, how much money did I make? Where is it gone? That's, and then, so 2015 rolled around. I'm originally from Los Angeles, and I grew up in Las Vegas. And I got an opportunity to play on a production show out there doing like programming, synth bass, electric bass. And I was there until 2018. That's when that show ended, and I decided to take the plunge into the even bigger pool of Los Angeles and haven't looked back.
Wow. Well, so yes, Vegas, sir. I'm sure. Yeah, Jeff Newman. I think you've probably run into Jeff Newman at some point.
My stand partner. Yeah, I mean, all the I was a member of the Las Vegas Philharmonic. That was like my first job, like my first orchestral job. So like Eddie Richards, Ryan, Jeff Newman, pretty much all those guys, like, I pretty much kind of grew up in that orchestra. And I'm not there anymore officially, but I still sub there pretty regularly. And of course, Donato is the conductor, and I know Donato from the Bay Area. So it's a very, very small circle,
man.
A small world, I should say. Yeah, man. Yeah.
That is crazy. I've had such a good time getting to know all those players in Vegas. I did the 2018 bass workshop. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
And it was just, I've had a lot of great times. It's Jeff has been doing some things here with his son went to the Golden Gate Bass Camp here in.
Oh yeah. Aiden is a fine player, and he's definitely going to be going places for sure. And Jeff is, man, I can't say enough about Jeff. Jeff is like, I can say Jeff's known me since maybe I was in middle school. Like, he's known me for a long time.
Well, yeah. He'll enjoy hearing this. That's fun. So you grew up in Vegas?
Yeah. So I was born in Los Angeles, and Los Angeles was very saturated. Lots of new opportunities in Las Vegas. So I grew up in Las Vegas. Elementary school, middle school, high school. And it was a really good experience for me because at that time I got to experience, even at a young age, the tail end of the glory days of being a musician in Las Vegas. So it was really cool for me because, my dad would always take me to see these jazz concerts because, we had like Carl Fontana living in town, a lot of like old school music live, which was really cool. And of course, unfortunately, stuff has dwindled down in Las Vegas. Like, I was on the last like Dinosaur production show before, stuff kind of started going south. I started working on the Strip maybe when I was like 15 or 16. And then, I got into like the show thing, doing some Broadway stuff. That's where I was able to play a lot of bags and do them well, pop, funk. The other thing, like for the classical thing, like, I started playing violin when I was 3. Like, I was a Suzuki brat because my aunt is a very well-known and respected pedagogue and player in Las Vegas, Shake Gukazian. She's actually the dean of Nevada School of the Arts, like the music prep school. And I was really good at the violin, but I hated it, man. Like, it was not me. And, at 9, 10 years old, they would start putting me in these competitions, and I would clean house. Like, I was always like coming in first place, always a concert master at the orchestra, but it didn't speak to me. And then like one day, I want to say I was like 10 years old. My dad had a vast record collection, and I think he put on, it could have been like Weather Report or Gypsy Kings. And I heard a bass solo, and I'm like, that's it. That's what I want to do. So I think the following year I was 11, and my dad bought me my first electric bass. And my mom always says, your father bought you that bass, and I never saw you again for another 5 years because you were locked away in your room, just, shedding, man. And then the double bass thing came through maybe in high school. And I'm like, okay, let me give this acoustic thing a shot, because, you know, I already had the bow thing. It was already there. It was just more so like garnering that physical strength for the instrument, and, you know, the left hand. So it was kind of a easy, I don't want to say easy switch, but it was very smooth for me. Even, you know, when I play double bass now, like, you know, a lot of people say, well, you don't sound like a double bass player, like, you know, and I'm like, I don't know how a double bass player is, like, you know, supposed to sound. But I think definitely having that experience, technique really helped my double bass playing, especially in the right hand phrasing, much like, like Ed Barker. I remember, you know, that interview that you did with Ed. My upbringing was much like that. My first real bass teacher was actually Oscar Mesa of the LA Phil. Like, I would drive out to Los Angeles like twice a month to go take lessons with him. So I kind of got a lot of different like mixes in my double bass approach. You know, I studied with Dave Moore, and he changed my life, man. Dave Moore is like, he is a freak of nature, man. As a pedagogue and a player, there's just, you know, he's like one of those once in a lifetime guys. His mind just absolutely blows me away. It was cool because Dave is a very analytical, you know, he knows just how to dissect stuff that my mind still can't comprehend. I don't really think like that. So like stuff with Scott, Scott would, you know, like, I'm like, okay, Scott, like, can you like, just like play this like bow stroke that you would use for like, you know, the trio of Beethoven 5. I would listen to it and I would pick it up. But on the flip side of it, Dave, you know, he would dissect the string angle. And sometimes it was a little overwhelming for somebody like me who's not the most analytical person in the world. You know, I remember when I started teaching, students would ask me, well, how did you do that? And I'm like, I don't even know how I did that. But like, you know, Dave's got it figured out, man. And I'm just so lucky that I got to study with both of those guys and really get a different approach. It really sat well with me. I feel like I got so much from both of those guys. Well, three of them, you know, with Steve too. I mean, Steve is just one of the best musicians I've ever heard in my life. Steve
and Scott are two of the last people I've seen in person since, besides my wife and the grocery store people.
Yeah, man. Yeah. That whole section. I mean, for me, it's like, you know, when I first moved to the city, you know, every Wednesday, you know, they would have like, you know, conservatory would give out tickets. So every Wednesday I would go check out, you know, the symphony concerts. And every Wednesday I was just blown away, man. Scott was very, 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 very influential and helpful in like really boosting my career. You know, there was a better part of a year or two. I was there a lot, man. And being there, it changed my whole approach to the instrument, you know, because I think being a sub is harder than when you're on the gig, because obviously there's more pressure on you. And of course, being a young Turk, you know, being in that section, like you got to throw down because like 6 guys and imagine 9 of them. So the amount of sound that you need to put out and contribute, there's a lot of pressure on you, you know? So that like really shaped my playing in a big way. I remember once, like before I got on like the sub list there, I played a mock audition for Mark Wright and Bill Richin. And it was before some audition, I can't remember. And all of them, they're like, hey man, it sounds great. Everything is there, but the one thing that's lacking, or one thing that you need to work on that separates the men from the boys at these auditions is that, you know, it sounds like, you know, you can tell who's played in a section, who has that depth of sound, you know, just that fatness. And I'm like, huh, okay. But at some point you can only attain that by playing in a section of that caliber or any good section, man. You don't like consciously do it. You know, that big, fat, pillowy, clean sound. So that was a big turning point for me. And hearing like, you know, Scott play, just like when he plays, it's just like the volume is almost painful. It's in a good way, because it's just like, it's like this tidal wave of sound. It's amazing. And then, you know, when I played for Tim Cobb, and I mean, I'm like, are you kidding me? Like my jaw hit the floor when he started playing at the depth of the sound.
Yeah, Scott is one thing I love about Scott is he's there's just no pretensions with Scott. He's there to do the job. He's on stage, warming up, doing everything, practicing what you'd preach. And actually, right before we went into shelter in place here, Scott was doing a master class with 5 high school students, and I think that was like the last live event I was at. was that. So just sitting there and like thinking through, it's just really, it's what a cool experience it is to get to work at a place like that.
Yeah, I mean, Scott, for me, man, like I would say he's like my biggest influence as a player, as a person. Music lessons aside, like I learned so much about life from that man. It's not even funny, man. Even now is like, it's not so much a teacher-student relationship anymore, even though, I still consider him my teacher, you know what I mean? It's you have one relationship as a teacher and a student, then you have another relationship as, colleagues. And it's, I'm very honored to call him, one of my closest friends and really a mentor, man. Like he's salt of the earth.
I'm not surprised. I mean, especially given your background, that you'd make that move to Vegas and then to LA. And like, was it a hard decision to move to Vegas?
It was, man, because when I left San Francisco, I was really kind of at the top of my game there, and then freelancing so much in the commercial music world, in the Latin world, the Grammy thing just went down with Pacific Mambo Orchestra. So we were all riding that tidal wave. And I had to go back to Vegas because of some family issues. Dad was alone. He wasn't in the best of health. And it was really hard for me to leave. But for me, family comes number one, man. So I just, my dad put a bass in my hands. He's the reason, I even have a career. You know what I'm saying? So I had to go back, man. Your career, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, you know what? Like, nothing's really going to change. Like, I can still fly up and still sub with the symphony, which I did. Like, I had to give up my, my positions with Oakland and Stockton, but it just, financially didn't make sense to come up because I was going to spend it all on travel. You know what I mean? I love Las Vegas, man. It's my home, but it's, as far as the arts and culture go, it doesn't measure up to San Francisco and Los Angeles. It's a young city, it's more of an entertainment town. It's not really an art town yet. It'll get there, but it needs time. So it was hard. I was like at the top of the totem pole, not to say that I was at the bottom when I got there, but it was just not the same level for me. And it got me down, man. Like it was a little dark there for a second because I'm like, well, crap, man. Like I don't have all these places that I used to go to. But I made the best of it, man. I'm kind of a chameleon. I can do what needs to be done. That's kind of what I did. But when I left Vegas, I had no intention of ever coming back because you hit a ceiling there, and like for somebody like me, it's like, for me, it's never enough. Like if I reach like one rung on the ladder, I have to outdo myself. So I had no intention of ever coming back because I just, I'll be honest, I was reaching for the stars, man. But Vegas was nice in a way that I got to add another, feather to the hat. The commercial side goes like doing programming, doing like Ableton, learning like Pro Tools, playback, doing all that, on stage, real time, doing the synth bass. So, from that aspect, it was cool. And then, the show kind of ended out of nowhere. We were supposed to be on a 5-year run and then cut the show in 2 months. And I'm like, great, I'm getting married in 6 months and my soon-to-be wife is going to be moving to Las Vegas. And I'm like, well, what am I going to do now, So I don't know how it happened, man. Like I landed some gigs in Los Angeles, some recording stuff. And I was like, you know what, screw it. I'm just, go big or go home. So I moved out to LA in August of 2018. And at first it was a little slow going. My workflow wasn't as fast as it happened in San Francisco. but, within about 5-6 months, I really got into the scene, and, just been trudging along since, man. And now we're here.
Well, it's a good time to be a chameleon.
It is, man. I mean, for me, like, I love playing in the orchestra, man. But I've been fortunate that I can do a lot of other bags well, and I enjoy playing them. Looking back on it now, I don't think I could be in a section full time, because it just doesn't afford you the time to go do other things, other types of music. And I mean, no disrespect to guys in the sections. I mean, that's it's great, but I kind of got burnt out, prepping for auditions, going to auditions, sometimes doing well, sometimes doing not too well. But I remember a couple of my friends are like, dude, like, why are you like busting your ass, like trying to get a job? Like, you're doing so much other things, mixed things, that like, it's not the end all be all. And in school, that kind of was, I was like, oh crap, like I need to win a job by the time I graduate and blah, 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 because, it can get competitive, man. And I remember, David Moore told me, it's like, yeah, Abe, that's not your measuring stick. Like you can't really focus on that. You got to focus on your daily goal to get to your end goal, because if you, keep looking at your end goal, you're going to miss all the stuff in getting there. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So I just decided to freelance. Like for me, like my big brother and one of my biggest influences here in LA is Mike Valerio. That guy can do everything.
He can indeed. Oh man.
Yeah. I mean, I've known Mike since I was in grad school, and like Mike's like really like shaped my outlook on a lot of things, especially like playing in sessions here in Los Angeles, like how to play. It's a different bag. Like the way I play with the San Francisco Symphony is not the way you play in front of the mic.
Okay, that's super interesting. Like, so how is it different? And by the way, I love Mike. I remember subbing in New World with Mike there. It was like 22 years ago or something ridiculous like that. And then Mike was in San Francisco playing with the symphony, playing that, I think it was that John Adams piece.
Oh, playing the 6-string part. Yeah, the gospel according to the other Mary. Yeah, that's a
piece of work. Yeah, he's such a great guy. So yeah, we got together in his hotel room and chatted for the podcast. That was such a fun time. But like, yeah, so how do you, having, playing in groups like the San Francisco Symphony, and then the type of work that you'd be doing on a session with Mike, yeah, like how do you approach those two things differently?
Well, I remember like when I first started hanging with Mike years ago, before I moved to Los Angeles, every time I would come to LA, we would go get lunch and we would go have a bass hang at his house. Like, and we still do, and, he would talk to me like, about, how this bow or this string sounds good in front of the mic, and, can you get a good sound on the open G string? And at that time I'm like, huh? I'm like, I mean, you're just playing in front of the mic, but I was, young and dumb. The hell did I know back then? But now playing in front of the mic, with 4 or 5 guys on a record date, it's a different thing, man. It's like, it's definitely a blend. You can't be balls out, pushing air like you're playing, Heldenleben or something like that. It's very controlled. And as Mike says, no artifacts. But it just has to be a nice, even sound, because, those mics that they're using, they're so live, those old Neumann mics or, these really expensive mics, they pick up everything, man. I have no hair on my head, but one of my hairs fell on the ground. It could pick that up, you know what I'm saying? But it's definitely, it's very, controlled. It's very clean. It's very beautiful. And it's another bag, man. It's another thing to practice. It's a blend, man. It's like, how good can you blend? How nice can you, your bow changes, it even, gets down to nitty gritty of like, what kind of strings is everybody using? What kind of strings sound best under a mic? Your instrument, your bow. It's a lot of things, because then when you go to the playback and you listen to this lush sound, it's, oh, okay, now I get it. now I get it, like why it's a different bag. Because, if you're sitting on top of the bridge and just putting out this insane amount of sound, it's going to overdrive the mic. It's going to ruin the blend. So, it's you can't do that. So it's definitely a different bag, and being able to like switch that on and off is I think it's challenging. And it's the same with electric bass too, man. Like, the way I play live and the way I play, different touch, it's a different sound. And it's funny, like a lot of live guys who play more live electric bass, you can tell like on tape, this guy plays more live because their sound is a little bit more aggressive, a little bit more pointed, more treble. Whereas cats who mostly play studio stuff, it's a little darker, it's a little bit more mellow. There's a lot of idiosyncrasies to studio bass playing, and I love it. It's the stuff that we play on these record dates here, it's not the most intricate stuff, but I think it really shows, it can show holes in your playing. Like how pretty can you play, two half notes? How pretty can you play a nice, quarter note phrase? It's deceptively difficult, I think.
Those seemingly simple arts that's not simple at all when you really get into it. I was talking to a...
Yeah. And Valerio is the master at it, man. Like never have I seen anybody in my life that can go and play, the first page of Bartered Bride and absolutely murder it and sound great, and then turn around and go play changes and turn around and go play electric. He is one of the most amazing bass players and musicians I've ever, had the pleasure of knowing, for sure.
If we rewind 6 months, not thinking of pandemic and our current moment,
Sure.
What was the mix of work like for you? Were you doing, you obviously you were doing some studio work, but were you also on the road? And
Yeah, studio, it was a lot of studio work. A lot of live work, within the Latin music industry. 6 months ago, I was doing a good amount of programming. I think around that time it was like the Latin Grammys, the live show, doing stuff like that. I think I had just come off a run with the Eagles, doing the orchestra bass parts for their Hotel California run, which is actually the test run was in Las Vegas. And actually, what's the date? Yeah, actually today we were supposed to play at the Forum, which would have been the third night of their run here. Yeah, man, it was everything was going really good. Like it was on the up and up. I was doing some award show stuff. And then it was funny. In March, I got the bass chair with Frankie Valli, Frankie Valli and the Four Seasons Jersey Boys. Being his bass player in the touring band. And man, I was stoked because we had like 100 dates this year. I was like, okay, man, this is going to be great. Like, it's going to, because you're an employee, you get it, it's a steady paycheck. So, we rehearsed like the first 2 weeks of March, 3 days before the first show, shut down. Oh. Boom, kibosh on that.
Oh man.
Yeah, that was a blow, man. And that's the risk. That's the risk you take of being a freelance musician. Is it dangerous? Yeah, but I like to gamble, man. So I roll the dice being a freelance musician, being a husband, being soon to be father. But another thing Mike always says, the cream always rises to the top, man. Like no matter the situation, if you're a nice person, you can play, you're going to work, even if there's a pandemic now. Luckily, knock on wood, the last 2 weeks I've been able to do some stuff at home. I know it's not always going to be like this, but yeah, that's the risk you take. But even, okay, let's say I did have a section job, those guys are working now too. Yeah, they're getting, we're all applying for unemployment and paychecks and stuff like that. But, I don't think one is necessarily better than the other. But, that's how my 6 months were, man. It was really good. It was, stuff was like, it was like going to the top and then boom, like down the roller coaster we go again. But, it's for me, like worrying about it, like, I can't sit there and dwell like, oh, my career was great and now it's over. It's not over, man. It's just a different facet of it. You know, it might get back to normal, but if it doesn't, I have to adapt again. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's a really healthy way to look at it, and it's inspiring, man. Actually, seeing you with the other folks on Instagram and like watching through some videos. It just, you know, it's nice to see. Yeah, how are you putting all that stuff together, man? I'm curious. Are you just sending like a? So
one of my colleagues here in Los Angeles, Isamu McGregor.
He's
a burning pianist, man. Like he's a freak of nature. You know, when this all went down, he started this Instagram page called, you know, Stuck at Home Records, because we're all stuck at home, literally. And like, you know, for some musicians that can be a death sentence, man. Like, you know, for me, it was like, I'm like, midnight rolls around at my house and I'm just like looking around. I'm like, well, what do I do? Like, because I don't usually go to sleep till 2-3 in the morning when I would come back from a gig or something or a session. So what he does is every Sunday, Isamu picks a band randomly of bass, usually bass, guitar, drums, and keyboard or some other instrument. It's always a quartet, and he gives a funny name to it. And he'll pick an order. Then on Wednesday, a guitar player will add something, so on and so forth. So, you know, that's kind of like how we're creating right now in this time. And it's been fun, man, because it just, gives me time to be in my man cave and record. And, it's fun. So usually, like you're asking how that happens, he sets up a Dropbox. Mostly everybody has like some kind of recording device at home. I have a pretty like full-fledged studio here. So what I do is I record direct to Pro Tools, what I have on my home computer here. But simultaneously, there's like a HD camcorder, recording me. So then, I bounce it, mix it, whatever I need to do, splice them, and then I open up Adobe Premiere, which I do video editing in, and I, sync the two together. Put it in the Dropbox. The next person downloads that video in my WAV file, puts it in their DAW, and we all go to town there. Beautiful.
Yeah, man. Love it.
Yeah.
Love it.
Yeah.
I love that you use Premiere. I've been getting into Premiere myself.
Yeah, I mean, it's, with the advent of Pro Tools in the home recording studio, unfortunately, the days of going to an old, a big room studio are few and far between. I still love going to a big studio, man. Yeah. I don't know about I like recording at home, but still walking into a room, especially the studios here, man, in LA, there's so much history in them. Like you walk through these hallways and it's like, wow. I remember my first date at Capitol Records, always, visiting family in LA, because a lot of my family's in Hollywood. You would always see the Capitol Records building. I'm like, oh man, like can't wait. Like maybe one day I can get there. And it happened, man. And I walked into that Studio A and I'm like, this is awesome.
Yeah.
So.
Well, there's something to be said for the space and the history of something like that. Like there's a reason why certain studios, I think just produce so many great people. And certainly some of it's the, with bigger studios who they've got engineering and that kind of thing. But a lot of it is just the history of that room. Like I was just in this super cool studio in England in January filming video, but they use it for everything. And man, you walk in there and just this beautiful space, warm sound. Indeed. And it's just you take the experience. It's a different experience.
Yeah, man. Capitol Studio A, it's like, Jesus Christ, like how many hits have been recorded there? It's like, it's almost infinite.
Yeah.
That's like really like that room is like, one of the last of the Mohicans, man.
Yeah.
And it's funny, like all those like, legendary studios, they're all in about like a 5-block radius of each other. Like Sunset Sound, Ocean's Way, East West, Capitol, in that heart of Hollywood. So, I hope it gets back to it, man. It's very uncertain, which way the industry is going to head after this. But I know a lot of people who aren't very positive about it. I know a lot of people who are positive about it. So it's, it's up and down.
Yeah, and I think we're all trying to figure out how to deal with this on our own terms. But it's cool. I get inspired when I see someone like you who's doing not just, at least publicly not bemoaning, and just trying to like get on and do things and be creative. And it's
man. I mean, like, listen, like, it was dark because it was like, by some weird coincidence, it was like super gloomy, super rainy for like 8 days straight. And it's like, it's like the apocalypse here, like happening. And I was like, okay, I'm like, wait a minute. Like, I got all this time on my hands, so rather than mope about it, like, I'm just going to go and shed more than I usually do. And, try to put out a video a day. Sometimes I take a week off because, 1 or 2 minute video takes a lot of time.
Yeah.
Sometimes, my wife, like comes in here is like, are you ever going to come, to the real part of the house? Like, God bless her, man. My wife is an angel, to put up with my crap,
Oh,
so,
man.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's, especially, if I start playing, the double bass, it's like it starts rattling other parts of the house, it's not a lot of new houses here in Pasadena. They're all old, so I start opening up the extension and doing warm-ups, and my wife's like, is that an earthquake? I'm like, no, honey, I'm just practicing.
Oh, man. Well, I can't wait. So next time you're in San Francisco, whenever that may be, or I'm in your neck of the woods, let's get together. I'd love to hang out. Yeah. Let's do a round 2. I'll bring some microphones and we'll chat in person. I certainly miss doing that. Not that I don't love connecting online, but it'll be a good time. And thanks for chatting. We could do a whole episode just on talking about Scott and Steve and Dave Moore and Oscar and all those folks.
Yeah, they're all legends, man.
Yeah. Abo, thanks for chatting. Thanks for making that video for us. Folks, follow him on Instagram. Check out that super cool video of all his gear. What a great guy. And I can't wait to do a round 2 in person whenever I get a chance to do in-person podcasts again. Never thought I would miss it as much as I do. I'm sure you're all missing your in-person experiences, but hopefully you're being like Abo and adapting to the times and being a musical chameleon and trying to make the best of this situation. So thank you for listening. I totally appreciate it. If you've been around for a while, thanks for sticking with me and us and this whole crazy thing. If you're new to the podcast, welcome. We've got a lot in the back catalog and many other associated projects, and you can learn more at our website, contrabassconversations.com. And by the way, you can reach out to me directly, feedback at contrabassconversations.com. And I respond to each and every email. It might take me couple days to get back to you since I'm buried in international online bass summit paperwork and the like, or digital paperwork rather. But I love hearing from people and guest suggestions and topic suggestions, whether it's for the podcast or the blog or video content, or if you just want to say hi in general, that's cool too. Contrabass Conversations is produced by Michael Cooper, Steve Hinchy, Trevor Jones, and Mitch Mooring. Mitch makes beautiful, I love his basses in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, Kilgore, Texas, and he won an award for tone at the last International Society of Bassists Convention. So super cool. MitchMooring.com is his website. And Krista Copper, who has her own podcast, by the way, it's linked up in the show notes, is The Backstage Creative, by the way, is the name of it. And she has done such a fantastic job of archiving and cataloging everything that we've been talking about on this podcast. And that has been so useful for putting together highlight episodes. And it's just going to be epic as I start to take all this shared content and experiences like what you heard today or have heard on the podcast in general and shape it into other kind of woven wisdom, I guess I'd call it. So thank you, Krista. Thank you to everybody. Thank you for listening. I'm your host, Jason Heath, and we will see you again soon for more life on the low end of the spectrum.